Welcome to the Kitsap Sun Editorial Board.
Thank you.
We're interviewing candidates for the 26th District Position 1, Jan Angel and Summer Schoenike.
Sumner Schoenike.
Schoenike. Okay, I've heard multi-pronunciations.
So have I.
Anyway, we'll begin with introductions. I'm Jim Campbell, the opinion editor.
I'm Glenn Simonson, I'm the CFO.
I'm Luis Morantes, I'm the North Kitsap representative.
Carol Monquist, I'm the Manchester representative.
And you two are?
I'm Sumner Schoenike, position.
And Jan Angel.
Okay. We'll begin with 3 minutes opening comments from each of you. And I will, in some subtle or otherwise way, let you know when 3 minutes is up. So who would like to start?
Doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm Representative Jan Angel. I'm the newest of your state representatives in the 26th district. I have lived and worked in the district for 27 years now, and background-wise, I've spent 14 years in commercial banking and finance. 9 years I own my own business right here in the district with multiple locations in Kitsap and Pierce County, about 54 employees. So I certainly know what it's like to walk in the shoes of our local business folks. I spent 7 years in Kitsap County real estate, where I learned a lot about land use, property rights, mortgage loans, and how people get into homes and get out of homes. And then ran for Kitsap County Commissioner and served as your commissioner for 2 terms, 8 years. In that capacity, golly, sat on a lot of different boards, not only locally but regionally and at the state and national levels. Now, just finishing up my first term as your state representative, and we're through 2 sessions, probably 2 of the toughest sessions that our state has had in a number of years. The top 3 priorities for me, number 1, we got to get people back to work. We're economy and jobs, people have lost their jobs, they've had hours cut, they've had wages cut. Got to get them back to work, and that can happen through regulatory and tax reform. Secondly, we have education that obviously is very important. It's a paramount duty per our Constitution, and that's the only thing our Constitution says you must fund. And we must do that fairly and predictably. Unfunded state mandates that are coming down are just unacceptable. They're unfair to all concerned when it hits the education aspect. And then third, I would say for me it's public safety, because I feel as an elected person it is our job to keep our citizens safe. And whether that be law enforcement, whether it be criminal justice, whether it be taking care of our most vulnerable, our seniors, our disabled, we must take care of our citizens. It is our obligation to do that. So obviously you can see we've got a lot of big issues. These, I believe, are the top 3. And it's very important that with the issues that we prioritize them, and then you take one at a time, figuring out what your core is. What are the core issues that government is to fund? In my estimation, a lot of different states have used citizen panels with citizens and experts that sit down and help to define what those core services are. And I believe very strongly that Washington needs to do that, but they have done that. Because a number of years ago, I was sitting at the National Association of Counties conference in Washington, D.C. when the consultant was hired to come and do that here with Governor Gary Locke. So we just need to get them off and dust them off. And we'll talk about more of your issues in just a minute.
So again, I'm Sumner Schoenike. I'm a pediatrician. I've been a physician for 31 years. And I am frankly stepping up to this office and to this candidacy out of a sense of responsibility. I think that we are in truly extraordinary times now. I have seen in my practice and in the process of this candidacy doorbelling a tremendous amount of pain in our community. We are looking at a huge problem with joblessness and its attendant problems, including loss of health care and, frankly, loss of self-esteem and a lot of calling of families together. I'm talking to people who are living 2-3 generations under one roof and a paycheck or an illness away from losing it all. I have been particularly unimpressed with Ms. Angel's performance in her term of office. It has been characterized by a great deal of partisan politics. It has been characterized by a lack of leadership, and I feel that the people of the 26th Legislative District deserve much, much more. I bring, in the way of qualifications to this candidacy, a 31-year history of high-stakes decision-making. It is what I have done in pediatrics and medicine, and I intend to bring that forward to this position as well. I can lead. I have led not only in healthcare, but also in our community. I am on the board of directors for the Franciscan Health System. I am serving on the board of directors for Communities in School Peninsula. I have done a great deal of healthcare leadership, policy making, including spearheading what I consider to be very important system of providing care to those who are uninsured and low income in Pierce County. And so it is that leadership that I offer to bring forward to this position. Additionally, we do indeed need a physician in the House. We have a very complex healthcare law on our table right now that needs unpacking, and it needs to be made sense of. And we must put together the best healthcare system possible for Washington State. And finally, I have too been a small business owner for 11 years and understand that part of this job. Thank you.
Both of you very good.
Well behaved.
Timely. Okay, who'd like to start off?
Go ahead.
Actually, you mentioned healthcare. You're one of the first physicians I think we've had here. I guess I'd like you just to comment in general about what's happened on a national scale in healthcare and whether you're in favor of the Obama healthcare plan.
I think we're going to find out that the Affordable Care Act is going to be very beneficial to all citizens of our nation, and in particular Washington State. I think Washington State is uniquely positioned to do well with this federal health care law. We have already pushed out, to the extent possible, our Medicaid to cover as many lives as possible. We have the basic health plan, which has been a further push out of coverage for low income and previously uninsured people of this state. And we have a very robust community healthcare system, the federally qualified healthcare clinic system and the rural healthcare clinic system, which provide a great deal of access to rural and medically underserved urban populations. We have this healthcare law on the table ready to unpackage. Presently, there is no physician in the legislature, and I would like very much to participate in the unpackaging and application to the infrastructure that is in place in Washington State right now. I think that this will be good for business. It is a tax write-off for businesses, tax deduction for businesses. It provides through the exchange the ability for small and large businesses to access the best, least expensive, best healthcare policy possible, and I think it's a big boon to business, and I look forward to participating in that application.
Okay, I've knocked a lot of doors, and our citizens are totally irate about this. This is a system that when they say it was shoved down their throat, it has been. There isn't anything in our Constitution that says we have to provide or we have to buy health care. I've been a business owner. Our Our local businesses right now are on their knees. They can't take any more you have to's. To me, that is an unfunded state mandate. It's a directive to our people and our citizens, and we don't even know what's going to be in there or what's contained in that act. I am totally against the way this was done. There are ways to provide people with affordable health care. This is not it.
Well, may I, you said a very complicated health program that hasn't been opened up yet. Because it's so incredibly complicated that most politicians have no idea what's in it, then you, by default, being a doctor, then you are going to interpret what it is, or you're looking forward to the government, the federal government interpreting it and you implementing it? I wasn't quite
Yeah,
clear on your
so
point.
to expand a little more, it is by complex. I mean, we ended up with over 2,000 pages of law in this act, and it is not. There is a good deal that is left up to the states for application, and again, we have a good infrastructure to lay that down on. I believe that we will be able to do that in such a way that will very quickly be able to provide medical care on a timeline, on the timeline as part of the act, to provide medical care for every citizen of Washington State. And I can tell you that when all is said and done, if we are able to move this act forward, and right now it's tied up in the courts, if we are able to move this act forward, I believe that we will end up with one of the best systems in the nation. I think that Washington State will become the example to follow.
Then I pose one question. Why is it that the European nations would like to be out of their system and have a program of health care like our country already serves and has? And I think that's the bottom line. I just came, I accompanied my daughters to a dance tour in Austria, and I heard it over and over again. I was at a national conference in Atlanta when Daniel Hammond from the British Parliament made the statement that it has become so onerous, that they have so many people now employed in that they could never back out of it or get out of it if they chose to. When people are coming from other countries to come to this country for health care, that speaks very loudly and clearly to me.
I'd love a chance to comment.
Sure.
Okay. I completely disagree. I mean, I've spent a great deal of time overseas, and I can tell you that it is the rare individual who is not very, very delighted and pleased to have health care as a right and not as a privilege for the few. And frankly, the Europeans and others are absolutely incredulous that we in America, the most powerful nation on earth, have no guarantee of health care for every man, woman, and child in this country. How can we let that happen? We're calling it a privilege for the few to have health care. I think that's what civilized societies provide for their citizens.
I'm going to ask each of you one simple question. Hopefully I'll get one simple answer from each of you.
You're new here, right?
Yeah.
And it's a question that has to do with probably why you got into what you're doing. And it's a question that a lot of people in the state are asking. Since you've been experienced in Olympia, I'm asking you to go first, Janet. Simple question is, what's wrong with Olympia?
I would sum it up in 3 words: accountability, efficiencies, and transparency. There is so much politics going on, and especially when you have a good time, as we did in 2007, and we were in a surplus time, it's real hard to tell your constituents, no, I can't bring that program home to you. And I spent my first session fighting taxes and out-of-control spending. And what you have got to do, in my estimation, is you have got to take the fiscal responsibility and the fiscal policies, and they need to be reworked. That's as simple as I can put that without going into how you rework them.
So as simply as possible, I would say, yes, precisely, it's partisan politics, as usual, bickering and fighting, acting as though this legislative process is in fact some sort of game. And in fact, it is not a game. It is about the people, and it is about service, and it is about effectiveness. We have, as I stated, a huge amount of pain in our community. If we can't step up to that pain, if we can't address it meaningfully through the legislative process, then what good are we? What are we there for? What is our purpose? So my point is, we've got to get rid of this partisan poison. We've got to figure out ways to reach across the aisle to the other side of the aisle, move an agenda, and address the issues at hand. If I hear anything at the door that is a recurrent theme, it is that legislators have failed to listen to the people's voice, and that the bigger influence is the moneyed influences, the people who are in and out of your office 5-6 times an hour when you're in session, and the absence of the citizen's voice at the table, the citizen's perspective, and where we need to move to make our society better and to heal our society. That's what's wrong with Olympia.
If I may just interject a small comment. Another representative that was here that was asked about politics, as usual, as you said, the bickering. He said, and he was a Democrat, that with the Democrats in control, it wasn't that the partisan politics was coming from the minority group, that they couldn't get a consensus among themselves in the government. So what would you do to bridge what? I read all your articles when you send them out, but
I can confirm that that's true. That is exactly true. There were 3 groups within the Democrat caucus, because the Democrats would come out and sit on the floor, and they sit right next to me. I'm right on the aisle. And we talk in the elevator. There isn't the bickering partisan politics. I don't know where you're even getting that. There were issues within the Democratic caucus. There were 3 different groups fighting each other, and I called it the family feud. We knew that was going on. They knew it was going on, but we had to sit and wait until such time as both the Senate and the House could come to agreement on which direction they went. And I'll tell you what, we all were getting very tired of it.
Okay, well, I contend still that there is immense partisan politics. I would just like to show you that in even Ms. Angel's various newsletters, there are all these allusions to her party, the Democratic Party, and the partisan side of this politics. And if you refer to the highlighted portions here, you'll see allusions to that party poison that I'm talking about. Really, you know, it's this kind of thing on the taxpayer's dime that keeps the polarity alive and well in Olympia, and it's the same polarity that is alive and well in our nation's capital. If we can't figure out how to work with one another, how to get to the center, and when Ms. Angel talks about these factions that are in the Democratic Party and in the Democratic caucus, she's right. There are factions there. That's the kind of debate we need to be having. And frankly, I would side with the centrist part of the Democratic Party, because that's the way forward. It is the centrist piece of the Democratic caucus that is most likely to reach across the aisle, to sponsor a bill with a Republican colleague, and there are Republican colleagues who do sponsor bills with Democrats, and move an agenda to heal our society. We've got big problems, and to act as though this is just a little tennis match is absurd, and I'm so tired of it. We've got to step up to serving the people and doing what's right for the 26th Legislative District.
I'd like to respond to that, just to give you an example. I don't know what you're passing around, but an example was there was a new program coming out, and it was going to be a lotto game. And we all have heard lotto is supposed to go for education. I wanted to do an amendment to that bill so that part of that money would be earmarked from this new program for education. I wanted to draft the legislation or the amendment, and my side of the aisle said, Jan, it's not going to go anywhere. I said, I want to do it anyway, and I did. Toward the end of session, they came over and they said, Jan, looks like your amendment's going to stand. I knew I didn't have the votes. I'm a minority party. I didn't have the votes to get that amendment done. But I knew another freshman on the other side of the aisle that did, and she cared about as much about education as I do. So I went over to her and I said, if I pull my amendment, would you introduce it and I'll second your new amendment? She said, yeah, I'll do that. So when the speaker called and said, Representative Angel, introduce your amendment, I withdrew my amendment. She immediately stood on the other side of the aisle, introduced the amendment. I stood up and seconded it. That passed. Who cares whether her name is now on that amendment? We got the job done, and that's bipartisan politics.
Speaking of education, which we will do now.
Okay, transition.
Kind of a clumsy segue perhaps, but better than none. How would each of you characterize the state of education in Washington State and the state of funding for education and the relationship between those two? We had somebody in the last folks we interviewed who said they felt education was failing the future of our state. But anyway, just each of you characterize the state of education as you see it in funding and the relationship thereof.
Sure. I agree. I think our education system is failing to a large degree. I think that the 35% dropout rate for our high schools is inexcusable, and I think it's a statewide embarrassment to be 37th in the nation for graduation rates. We need to fix that problem. Why does that exist? I'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to tell you that education, every dollar that we put in education is an investment in our future. It's been estimated that every actual dollar put into education is a net of $7 on the yield side of the equation. So we need to step up to education. Education is what civilized societies do for their citizens. And it's similar to healthcare in that regard. We need to fully fund it, and our Superior Court system has said as much. We need to step up to that and fund it over the next 8 years, and we will do that. It is an essential service of government. There's no question about that. Having said that, however, we have a huge crisis in the education system. That 35% dropout rate that we're living with year after year after year is an absolute guarantee that 1/3 of our population over time will be unprepared, uneducated, and on the streets at risk for alcohol, drugs, crimes, and worse. So it's not only an economic issue, a social issue, it is a significant public safety issue as well. We must address it. Why does it exist? We don't provide meaningful career paths for our kids, period. If you're academic and you graduate, you're on your path to an academic future. But if you're non-academic and you're in high school, if we're not providing meaningful career paths for kids to get on so that at graduation they are on their way to or already have accomplished the ability to move into a career and a job, then we have failed. We have failed those kids. in my opinion, we're forcing those kids out onto the streets. I see them as a pediatrician. They come into my office, they're anxious, they're depressed, their heads are down, they've lost self-esteem because they're non-academic kids. Every society in this world has its non-academics, and they provide essential services for that society just as important as those services that are provided by the academics. In fact, I would contend that we might have a few too many philosophers in this world. I mean, let's talk about giving these kids something real that they can get their arms around, that gives them a path to a career, not by default, not by failure, but a purposeful path forward to a career. And let's match those careers to jobs that we know exist. Let's talk to the businesses and find out what those jobs are. Let's stop hiring from out of state. Let's stop hiring for sure from out of the nation. And let's train our kids to move into those jobs. The jobs we know that exist today and those that are projected to exist in the future. We can do this, but we have to make a conscientious effort to make it happen.
Just briefly, how would you propose doing this? Would you separate kids off into career paths early in school?
I think that we need to have this conversation as a society, and my proposal would be that we do it as a demonstration first, that we try to find the proper time to make this decision. Frankly, I think the European model, which is what I've seen, works reasonably well, but I think they make the decision too early in the process. They make it in 4th grade. I think 7th or 8th grade would be more appropriate for us, but we need an American version of this career path conversion of education. And we need it soon because, folks, we are absolutely guaranteeing our own unraveling if we let it continue as it is.
I'm going to go a totally different direction on this.
It was an open-ended question.
Because everyone is really working hard on the education part of it. Bill 2166 was passed that lays out a blueprint to help us get there. But in talking with the teachers that I have spoken with, the problem comes down to parental involvement in children's lives. I asked her about the dropout rate with our kids in junior high and high school. When you have 2 parents going to work every day trying to put bread on the table and make the mortgage and pay the bills, the kids often get left to get up and get themselves to school. The teachers are calling, trying to find out, where are these kids? Why aren't they getting to class? If they miss more than 1 week, they can't catch up. And what is happening is, and I got this last weekend from a local teacher in Port Orchard that says, I call my students when they don't show up. And I'm getting from many of the parents, well, we have to leave, they're supposed to be getting up, they wanted to sleep in just today. Well, where does the responsibility lie with education? Yes, funding is very, very important. And I believe at the state level, we need to come in and do the education budget first. You come in, you fund it, you get it through the House, the Senate, you get the governor to pass it, you take the politics out of your kids' education and get it done. But the other side of that is parental responsibility. You've got to get some local control down to the schools as close as you can. And I'll tell you what, when we have teachers that are providing their own materials, when they're calling students trying to get them to show up for school, when they're calling parents trying to get parents involved, you can't make that happen. So I would take it back to, with an economy and 2 working members in a family, somehow the educational aspects has got to get to our parents, that if they do not take an active role in their kids' education, someone has to take some accountability for that. And I think that is a big issue at the present time.
I'm going to agree with both of you, okay? First of all, I've never argued that parental involvement in the child's education is critical. It's very important. But you can't regulate parental involvement.
That's right.
Okay? We had those issues with parental involvement prior to this economy tanking. Okay. With regard to your ideas, with regard to the academic versus the technical track, I couldn't agree with you more. Not everybody is on the academic side. Okay, I've got 2 diverse children. One very academic, one struggling but making it that way. But there is in place some tracking of sorts already in this county. The Westtown Technical Skills Center does a tremendous job of getting kids that aren't really in that academic side. They're putting them into automotive repair, body work, AutoCAD. My son went through the AutoCAD system. Now he's in engineering school. Thank God, I told you to stay in there. But the problem is, how do you, the pilot project is already there for Kitsap. How do you increase the funding? How do you make that more available to the vast 30% that are dropping out? You know, the bottom line is, I think both of you are saying that there's some problems with the education system. I think we're both looking at it 2 different ways. And the bottom line, get down to the core value of it, is dollars.
Or getting the dollars to the classroom. And I question they're getting there.
Why not? Isn't that the lottery? Wasn't that the lottery money was going for?
It's about 12,000.
There's a lot of money going into the education
There
system.
certainly is, but is it getting to the classroom? And I don't think that it is.
Well, the teachers that I talk to say that it is. And just to speak to your point, is, you know, there is a cycle here. And I think we're all aware of it. It's basically the lack of education, unemployment, poverty. Okay? And there are certain entry points that have greater leverage and greater impact than others. I don't think that we can address this from the parent equation by somehow legislating good parents. You know, that's just not doable. What is doable, however, is affecting the entry point of education. And again, I think that, and you're right, we do have a great model right here, but it's spotty. It's spotty across this state, it's spotty across this nation, and not all of our kids have the advantage of a technical vocational training that kids can get right here in Bremerton. We're fortunate, but that doesn't hold true across this state or across this nation. So what I'm talking about is using our district as an example of what is possible in education. I say let the dollars, the education dollars, follow our students through this process into the vocational technical side. Let's work with our Voc Tech pieces, our TCC Gig Harbor, our Olympic College, to make this training happen and to make it relevant so that we've taken into consideration businesses that have the jobs that are available, what's needed, where are they hiring from out of state, where are they hiring from out of this country, and how do we meet those needs? We can do this. And I suggest we do.
We
And the sooner
can,
the better.
if the dollars get to the classroom. And that has got, if the dollars can follow the student to the school, and you have the local control there of taking the responsibility for getting those kids through, it will happen. But there is an in-between that I don't believe will let that happen, and that's our teachers' unions. So you've got a big hurdle to get over there.
And how would you propose working with them?
The issue is getting the money to the classroom.
I understand.
And I think the problem would take care of itself if you could have a directive that that money goes to the classroom, and then the principal could be the CEO of that school distributing it out. I don't think that part of it has anything to do with the good teachers versus the not good teachers, or who's hired, who's laid off, but it gets the money to a school so that they can determine what kind of budget they have to work with. But I just believe that is not happening. I know that's not happening.
Can you give an example?
The schools aren't, well, that's why we're in the mess that we are. The funding isn't getting through to the schools. Why else are the teachers out there buying materials? Because they don't have enough paper and pencils for the kids to even get through a year. I went out to South Colby and I interviewed the principal there, and I was asking him, I said, can I put on my old real estate hat? I said, we've got dry rot all out here along the building. He said, Jan, I'm trying to get the PTA. I said, whoa, wait, PTA working on the dry rot? Where's the capital fund dollars that should be coming through to keep our facilities well maintained? It's not coming through. He's not getting it. He pulled out papers that he had color-coded for me. And I'll tell you what, there are so many unfunded state mandates on our schools that the state is not funding, that there isn't money to do the basic things like taking care of the facilities, making sure our kids have materials and supplies to work with. And that has got to be corrected. So it's the process of getting the money through the schools that has to be worked on.
Sumner, you have any comments on classroom dollars?
I would just say this, that, you know, our teachers are awesome. They
Yes,
are
they are.
incredible. They're committed. They understand the power of education and the empowerment of education. They want to teach. They're there not for the money, not for the power, not for the glory. They're there because they've been called to be there in a very, very deep and important way. And so I feel as though the piddling little salaries that we provide our teachers are pathetic. And frankly, I think that our unions are working hard to keep a level playing field for our teachers and our principals and our administrative staff. I think they're doing a yeoman's task. We've got some system problems we need to correct, but I got to tell you that I feel as though every teacher deserves about twice the salary that they get. And I would like to see us honor teachers the way we honor our professionals, our other professionals in this society. They deserve every penny they earn.
I just want to clarify something you said. It was kind of almost a one-liner, or maybe I wasn't understanding it properly. When we're talking about the parental stuff, you said you can't legislate the parental involvement and so on, but we can legislate the entry point of education. Did you mean kids starting school at a younger age?
By entry point, I mean the entry point into the cycle of lack of education, underemployment, and poverty.
Okay.
I'm talking about the entry point conceptually.
Not chronologically.
I think the big leverage point there is education. That's where we can affect true change. And if we really want to step up to making this a healthier society, that's where we need to focus our energy and our dollars.
Where does each of you stand on 1098? Sumner, you want to go first?
I think the whole issue of 1098 is all about tax fairness. And we have had these conversations for literally 50, 60 years, back and forth. We've tried to legislate an income tax previously, and I think we all know the history of that. This is not going to be an issue that is legislated. If it comes up from the people as an initiative and people get behind it and decide that they like it and they vote for it, so be it. I will tell you that there are some things I like about 1098. 1098 is incorporated in 1098 is that the B&O will go away for 81% of our small businesses. I think that would be a very good thing. The B&O would be reduced for 12% of our businesses. I think that would be a very good thing. You know, we enjoy, in the state of Washington, we enjoy being one of a handful of states rated by Forbes magazine as the best places for large businesses and corporations to be. And so when we hear this refrain that we're killing business, the only businesses that we're killing in the state of Washington are our small businesses. The reason we're killing them is the B&O. So I'm for having the conversation, addressing the issue of the B&O, and figuring out how we're going to level the playing field so that our small businesses can survive. Because they're taking a big hit now. I'm seeing businesses shuttered in Port Orchard. I'm seeing them shuttered in Bremerton. I'm seeing them shuttered in Gig Harbor. And we got to stop the hemorrhaging because it's happening and it's happening fast.
We absolutely have to stop the hemorrhaging. And if you go out and you put an income tax on the employers that provide the jobs, it won't work. You will have companies voting with their feet because they'll be walking out of the state. It's already happening. When look at what happened with I-960, the will of the people, they voted that initiative in. And when that initiative was gutted, we had $800 million of new taxes in 1 year, the highest ever in the history of the state of Washington. Now, if you take this and you add income tax, no matter where you start with it, do you really believe it's going to stay there? It could be changed in one session down to 50,000, 40,000. Look at the states that have income tax versus the states that do not have income tax. You must allow business to be able to do what they do, and that's retain and create jobs. And they can't do that if you continue to tax them to where they don't have the money to even update their businesses, to modernize or stay up with the times. Our business people are on their knees, and this income tax will be devastating to the state of Washington should it pass.
Could I comment? So, if our businesses are hemorrhaging, and we've known about the B&O tax for a few years now, why is it that we have not seen any legislation from Newtown brought forward to deal with this issue and to make life better for our small businesses?
Hey, we certainly tried. We put workman's comp out there on the floor. We put L&I reform on the floor. B&O, all of those things are the type of reform that has to happen. And I want to say one thing further. When we got onto the floor and got in heavy discussion, we called for the governor's help to come to the floor in the name of business. It was 8:45 at night. She had retired. Where is the leadership to get this state on track with these local businesses? B&O does need to be addressed, but you don't hide it and put it in to an income tax bill and use it as a carrot to pass that bill. That isn't the way I think policy should be written.
So when you say we, who are you talking about?
The entire Republican caucus and some of the Democrats as well. It was a bipartisan issue.
You know, I'll state this real quickly. It's the same thing I stated to the previous board. Every politician that's come in here says they hate B&O. And I tell you, we do too, but nothing ever gets done about it.
No.
There will be. I have offered to sponsor a bill, and it's in the works right now. We'll see what happens with it again. But the B&O, there are other, you can't just pull it out totally because it's too big of an amount of state government. But you can phase it out with different types of taxes to take its place. And that's what's in process right now.
Carol, you have any questions?
Yes, with respect to I-960 that was suspended, I'm going to guess you didn't agree with it.
Absolutely not. I fought till I was gavelled down.
Yeah. What do you think the odds are that that'll be reinstated as per the people's wish?
Based on the emails, the quantity of emails that I got, I don't think, I think it will be reinstated strongly.
Do you really?
Yes.
And do you
The
think it
people
should?
are very upset about that, and they should be.
And you? What is your opinion?
I agree. I mean, I am pleased to say that Senator Kilmer and Representative Sequist both voted against voting 960 down. And I'll say again, they constitute a centrist part of the Democratic caucus that is trying to move an issue forward, and that they have respect for an initiative that was the will of the people. And, you know, to vote that away is voting against that will. And that's not the way a democratic process works.
You mentioned to replace the B&O with other taxes besides the income tax. Can you
a
little more
different,
specific?
a different type.
Yeah.
For example, my daughters have businesses in Port Orchard and Silverdale. They made a comment to me. They said, "Mom, if we could just get the B&O tax off of the gross." That is not a fair way to even look at putting a tax on. How do you know what the bottom line is? What is the net that these folks are getting? So I think that is what has to be looked at. Is there a tax, and I believe there is one, that can be replaced with the B&O to where you can take out all of these things that get you down to what the net income after salaries, after production costs, after manufacturing costs, and you take a look at that, and then possibly you have the tax on that portion. But whenever you put it on the gross, I mean, it's just a totally unfair, unbalanced a way to do business, and it's hurting us.
Sumner?
Well, I think that the idea of another approach is excellent. I think we need to have that conversation, and we need to find a way forward. And you asked about 1098. I'm not supporting 1098, but I'll tell you it has got the conversation going, and I'm pleased about that. And it's got the right emphasis too, and that it's looking at getting rid of the B&O, just as we've said. We need to do it because it's killing our small businesses, and it is our small businesses that will grow us out of this great recession that we are in. Having said that, I gotta say that it is my understanding that it is unconstitutional to put a tax against the net. And I don't know the weeds on that, but I have heard that the reason that there is a tax on the gross instead of the net is that it is stated that that is the way it must be by the Washington State Constitution.
Just since you reopened the door of 1098, when we were talking about it earlier, you said there were some things you liked in it. What are some things you don't like now that you've said you're not supporting it?
I'll tell you, the things that I don't like about 1098 are that the income tax idea is something that has been universally rejected by the citizenry of this state over and over and over again. And it is the purpose of a legislator to engage the citizenry and to be a conduit of the citizens' voice forward, not to exercise their own values and their own opinions in lawmaking. And so I have to respect that opinion, and I have to respect that decision. And so that is a piece that I think is simply unacceptable.
I'd like to bring back to, as your county commissioner, I worked at the Puget Sound Regional Council with a total tax reform to where, and it was tied with looking at economic development. If you have strong economic development, strong vitality with your economy, the government services that need to be provided, you also will have that vitality because they go hand in hand. If you make business successful, if you make employers successful, then they will again be able to retain and create jobs. That throws money back into the economy, and it's really as simple as economics 101. So why are we having so darn much trouble in getting all the reforms that have come to this floor, at least since I've been there in 2 years, over and over again, passed?
Comment? I mean, just to remind everyone, we are in fact in a great recession right now, and Washington State is not unique in running a deficit and looking very, very bad economically. It is a national phenomenon, and the reason that we are in this fix right now is that we are in serious trouble nationally. Having said that, yes, absolutely. In good times, there are discretionary funds, and there are all kinds of great programs and projects that the government can do. But right now, In this great recession that we're in, we've got to tighten our belts, we've got to buckle down, we've got to declare what it is that essential core government functions are, and we've got to fund those, and we've got to throw the rest into a big bin and fund those things that we consider important to fund with any extra dollars that we might have. But I believe we're not going to have a lot of extra dollars. I know we're going to be scrambling again.
Let's go back to 2007. We had a $2 billion surplus. I started 2009, we have a $9 billion deficit. 2 years' time. 2 years' time.
We're not unique.
The recession
We're not unique.
The recession then hit, and it just made a bad deal worse. But you can't balance a budget, a state budget, on one-time federal stimulus money. You can't balance it with new taxes and keep doing this and think that you're going to have something different. We're already $3 billion in the hole right now for this next session. So what's going to happen is we've got to get down and redo the fiscal policies of our state. First of all, you do define what are the priorities, what are the core that we need to be financing. And many states have taken local councils with experts and citizens and put them together to define what those are. You go one step further and you prioritize then what those core defined issues are. Then you go one step further than that and you look at those and say, okay, now are the services that we're now going to offer agreed? Should they be public or should they be private? And you use basic business models of cost analysis to see, can you do that cheaper as a public or privatizing that part of that service, or is it better left to a public service and offered by the government? But we have to go to that point because we have got to get to a point where we do business differently. There are a lot of important services, and once they're earmarked as being important, then we've got to look at how can we most efficiently fund those services. After you have that analysis, then you go to the next step is how much revenue do we have to fund that, and you go accordingly, just like you would do with your business budget, with your home budget, because government has to live within its means. Snowball Economics 101.
Is it too big? Is the state government too big?
Yes, it certainly is. And it's not to say that a lot of the programs we have weren't good programs, but we can't afford them all anymore. We just can't. The money isn't there.
So I guess I got to ask, liquor stores?
Okay.
I'm supporting that, and I'll tell you why, because when the senator brought those to the floor, Senator Shelton, first of all, there was performance audits have been done. Brian Sontag, I believe, has done an excellent job. He has done performance audits in laying out for us what we could do to save money, but he's been blown off. Nobody's paying attention. And when he started bringing up points about privatization, his budget was threatened. Is that the way we do good policy?
By whom?
By the, further up, by the OFM, by the governor. He is elected to do these performance audits and to be able to give us direction. He gave us that direction on the liquor stores. He gave us that direction on printing shops. There's a lot of other things that could be done. And by doing that kind of a performance audit, it should give us very good direction on what the cost analysis is and what's the best way to do it, public or private.
Senator, liquor.
View on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely opposed to this idea. As a public health professional, I can tell you Washington State is privileged to have one of the lowest incidences of alcoholism, one of the lowest incidences of underage drinking, and one of the lowest incidences of alcohol-related accidents and crime. And I attribute that to the control by the Liquor Control Board. I can also tell you that it is a $360 million revenue to the state. A good portion of that $360 million flows to local governments. And I think the idea of privatizing is absolutely ludicrous.
I'm gonna touch back
A
on.
lot of states are doing it very, very successfully. The key there is making sure if you're gonna do that, that you have really good process in place. Because if you don't, you can have unexpected consequences, but you've got to put the processes in place. It's been very well done. In fact, I could name 5 to 6 states that are doing it and doing it well. Sorry, I got
It's all right, no, sorry, buddy. You mentioned the importance of the legislature to be a conduit for the voice of the constituents. There's also a critical component of leadership that's required in those positions. How do you balance that need to listen to your constituents and lead in a manner that's expected by those constituents? Both of you answer that question. I'll have you answer it first since I had Jan answer it before.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to really launch here and tell you, I feel as though our democratic process is dusty and has fallen into a serious position of disuse. We've got a precinct system that is used to get candidates elected, but little else more. We've got citizens who are screaming because they've got ideas that they want to bring forward, and they want to help. They want to participate in the solution side of this equation. We've got folks in our community who are screaming to let us know where the pain is, where the issues are, and how they define those issues. And I think we absolutely must engage the public on these issues. How do we do it? We start by not treating this job as representative as a part-time job. It's not a part-time job. It's a full-time job. It's not only a full-time job, it's 1.5 FTEs. And we got to step up to that and act as though that's the case. We've got to figure out how to engage the public meaningfully. I think we've got a great precinct system. We need to dust it off and get it to work for us. We need to create conduits of information flow so that I, as a legislator, can be informed about what the definitions of the problems are, what the issues are, community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and I intend to make that happen. I'd like to reinvigorate the democratic process. I'd like to recreate a meaningful channel or conduit of information flow from our neighborhoods to the legislators, and from our individuals to the neighborhoods. And where necessary, I think we need to have regular town halls and public forums so that we can engage on these issues and carry them forward meaningfully. That said, you're right. There is a great deal of leadership necessary in this job. This job calls for ideas. And I think it is incumbent on the representative to bring those ideas forward to the people, to engage on the ideas, to ask the people's input on the ideas, to develop the ideas with the citizens and move them forward. And where it comes to making a judgment call, you know, there's no substitute for just plain old good judgment and understanding the will of your citizenry. And I very much honor that voice, and I look forward to invigorating the democratic process in that way.
I'm not having any trouble invigorating that process. The people are speaking loud and clear. I have a district office that is open 5 days a week, so this is a full-time job for me. And our citizens are, I'll tell you what, we are busy. They need help. They need solutions. They need help just getting through some of the process. We do this every single day. We answer the email. We answer the telephone calls. We answer the letters. We meet with constituents. And I'll tell you one thing. I can say to you, as honestly as I know how, I know the issues of my constituents. I've been out there working on them for the last 2 years in listening to what they have to say. I had my last town hall meeting, we had 4,000 people on the line for more than an hour. And they're on there being proactive. The problem isn't getting people reinvigorated, it's having politicians listen to what the people are saying. And that's not happening.
Hey, you can have 1 minute to say why they the voters out there, there's bound to be some that are undecided. Why they should vote for you instead of the other person there, and wrap it up in 1 minute. Individually, not collectively.
Well,
Okay. 1 minute? Okay.
do you want me to start?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I look forward to stepping forward. Again, I believe that I understand the responsibilities of this office. The things that I feel that I can bring forward are the following. I can lead. I live here full-time. I've run a successful small business. I am a problem solver. I look forward to engaging on the issues with the citizens meaningfully. And I regard this as a full-time job, and I will act accordingly.
Okay, I think today we've had a great discussion about a lot of what the issues are. They're critical. I have a very broad background to deal with issues in all different categories, whether it be land use, whether it be public health, whether it be transit. I have a lifetime of leadership. This isn't something new for me. I've been leading for many, many years. I know the issues that our constituents are faced with. I know what to do about those issues because I've been doing that for 2 years. The thing that we have to get back to are the 3 points that I said before. We have got to work on the efficiency, the accountability, and the transparency of our state government. With that, we'll get this train back on the track. Is it going to be hard? You bet it is. It's not going to be easy, but we can do it. And I look forward to representing the people to make that happen. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you all very much. You guys kept it lively.